Well, I had down that we stopped at 12. I don't know if that's what y'all had or not. I think it's 12. If not, because I don't remember talking about 13. So that's page 18. If you want to turn to page 18. Ye are, and we're in Matthew 5, picking up from last week. It's such a long chapter. We've started at 13 this week. Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of man.
Are you recording it?
Uh-huh. Yep. So, and hopefully it's going to Facebook too. It was showing it here. Nobody's watching, so but that's okay. One of the things that I've heard, read about this scripture, and I've always wondered what it was. It's like, how in the world does salt lose its saltiness? And the last part of this talks about it down there on the next page. It says, most salt in the ancient world was derived from salt marshes or something like that, rather than evaporation of salt water. And salt caves too. They would find salt caves and they would be pure salt. It says, therefore, they contain many impurities. The actual salt, being more soluble than impurities, could be leached out, leaving a residue so dilute that it was of little worth. And that made sense to me because I never could quite understand how salt could lose its saltiness. Even if it gets wet, you let it dry out, and it's still salty on the bottom of the glass or whatever, and taste it, it's still salty. So that made a lot of sense to me, that if we're not pure salt, then if we've got other mixtures in us, that salty will get diluted and it'll eventually get out of us. If we mixed in with a lot of other, whatever, thoughts or people or anything like that, it's not helping us, we can lose our edge. And to me, that's what I really think that that portion is what it's trying to tell. We have to keep there. We have to keep. Salt's also a preservative. I remember Grandpa's smokehouse where he'd smoke the hogs and the bacon and everything to have it, and then they'd also salt it. Have your salted pork and everything. It'd preserve it for a while. And so that's what we need to be in our society. It's also an antiseptic of some sorts. Stings like fire when you get your hand down in it, and that's what it is. It's burning that, that infection out. So all of those is what we was reminding, he was trying to remind his disciples that salt, you have to stay, in the pure sense, to be the salt, to be able to influence other people. It was very rare back then. I mean, not rare per se, but it's costly. A lot of times they would have the little salt containers, I forget what they call them, boxes, and they'd have a little teaspoon over it, and it was real hard. And that's what it says down here. The Roman soldiers were sometimes paid with salt. It says that gives rise to the phrase, you're worth your salt. Have you ever heard that one before? So that's, it's also flavorful. It helps us. The salt gives its flavor, even when most of the recipes will call for a little salt. Even in some of the sweet stuff, it'll have a little salt because that kind of changes it just a little bit to make it. It's not enough where you can taste it as far as the salt in it, but you can really tell a difference if it has it or not has it in the flavor of it. Mom, down there, we changed her swimming pool over to a saltwater pool. And you can taste it. It's salty. You know, you can tell it's salty, but it's not like salt water. I mean, it's not like seawater. You know, you're thinking, because you open your eyes up and it's real clear. It's not like chlorine, doesn't burn your eyes or anything. It's just enough to kill the bacteria. So all of that, it's part of what salt does, part of what it is. And he's telling us, in this world, we need to be that salt to help people to flavor them, to be a preservative for them, and to be an antiseptic, you know, to help them when the people need it. Verse 14 through 16, Brother Epperson.
Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, that it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.
Here again, he's talking to the disciples. This is the sermon, the part of where he gave the Sermon on the Mount. And he's telling them that they are the light of the world. What does a light do? It illuminates. It gives you an ability to see. If it's in a dark place, you turn the light on, you turn another light on, you turn another light, whatever, to brighten it up so you can see better. One of the things that it talked about that I thought was interesting, some of the commentaries, in the very beginning, when God created the heaven and the earth, one of the first things he said after that, what was it? Let there be light. There was no light. It was until you have light, all you have is darkness. Darkness really isn't something that you produce. It's something, the absence of. Light dispels that darkness. So that's what it's trying to do. A city that is set on a hill. I know when I was working out in Liberal, and we'd be working late at night one time going home, and you could see the light 10 miles away. And you can see the light on the horizon. Just dark as, you know, midnight or whatever out there, but you could see that light. And you think, oh, I'm getting there. Well, it's another 10 miles. This is a long ways away. This is another 10 miles where you're getting home. But it is. It's set up. If it's up on a hill, it's gonna. Nobody's gonna hide it. It's something that's illuminated. That's why they put lighthouses up so high, so people can see out there as far as they can give it. It says, neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. When we're watching, I know this, The Chosen, we kind of see, and we looked at some of the antiques that they had while they were in Israel, and it's just the oil lamps. And you can think, like we were talking earlier, we'd have one light in the house because you only had one outlet in that room. We was talking about how much electric we didn't have. So you'd have one light that gave the light. So you sat over there by the light. You put your chair over to whatever you're going to read at night. Nowadays we have lights everywhere, you know, or some people do. They got light over here, lights in the ceiling, lights in fans. The little lights that change colors and all these different, some houses do. It's just amazing how much but they have to have that light. So in order to be able to see. If you don't have the light, you're liable to run into something and hurt yourself quite a bit. That happens a lot at our house because it's so dark sometimes. We have to open up the windows and stuff. Our house wasn't made for many lights, and we put fans up that have lights. But we do. Well, Charlotte, she bought a new trunk the other day and put it at the end of the bed. And I said, you really want that there? It don't bother me because I'm on the other side of the bed when I get out. First time she did, she kicked it. You know, she said, let's put that bedspread over. We won't spread that bed over.
That reminds me when here, oh, it's been several years now, but I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and I didn't turn on any lights, as you know.
Yep.
And I ran to the door face.
Uh-huh.
I ended up with my face got kind of messed up.
We
And
got,
and then I had to explain it to whenever somebody said, well,
Yeah.
how did you get, such and such? Oh, I really.
Yeah.
The door
Harold's
face.
getting a little rough here. Yeah, we've got night lights. I'm one that I could sleep with lights on or not. It don't bother me. I mean, when I wake up, yeah, it takes me a little bit longer to get to sleep, but I don't care. So night lights are in ours. We got one in right there where we can kind of see, but it's not real bright.
No.
And then we got one in the bathroom, so we can kind of see around in there too. But even in the bathroom, in the toilet, we got our toilet separate. It's got a little own door with the. So she bought one of those candles that battery powered candles, and it comes on about 10 o'clock or whatever time you set it. It runs all most of the night. So if we have to get in there, we can kind of see too. We want something like that because we, like I said, I've run into stuff too. So you have to have that light. He wants us, Jesus is telling his disciples, he wants us to be that light. He wants us to be referenced. Somebody can see, not only see us, but see that light in us. We know the moon's there, but if the sun wasn't there, we wouldn't know the moon was even there, because the moon creates no light of its own. It's all reflected off of the sun.
Well, we shouldn't have to tell people
That's
that
right.
we're Christian.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with us saying that we're Christian,
No.
but in the same sense, our light ought to be shown by the way we live and reflecting our respect for God.
That's right. That's right. In this day and age, sometimes it's hard not to. I mean, you just speak out.
Yeah.
You think what is common or what is reasonable, and they look at you like you're crazy, And it's like, no, that's the way I was brought up.
Well, I know used to at work, every once in a while there'd be somebody sit in and cussing about something,
Mm-hmm.
and then they, oh, excuse me, I know you're a Christian and all that.
Yeah. You don't have to. You can apologize to me. That's not going to get you anywhere. I know where you stand. Okay, there are several others if you want to read some of the others that's in there, but we're going to skip on to the next one, which is 17 and 18. It's on page 23. You going to read that for us, Iris?
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one title shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. Now, they were having a hard time because before this, the Pharisees was talking with him, and he's already come up against them a couple of times in his ministry. And he's talking against the Pharisees, basically here. He didn't come to change the law, but he came to fulfill it. And they are seeing it the opposite way, because they are the law, what they see. There's one of the things you have, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is what the Sadducees only took. The Pharisees, they took the last portion, the prophets and the Psalms and those two. But most of them only were concentrating on the first 5 books. All right? And that's where the law was. And then you had the prophets, of course, afterwards. It was given visions, things like that. But that's what he's saying. All those guys, I'm not saying anything against them. He didn't come to change all of that. He came to change your interpretation of it. Because that's what, and each one of these that we're going to go into in a few minutes shows, he says, you've heard this, that, and the other. And he tells them you've heard it because that's what they're teaching. They taught the Torah, which is the first 5 books. But then they also taught afterwards the Talmud. And there was another one after that. And what that means is that's the interpretation of the first 5 books. That's some of the extras. We always talk about the 686 or whatever it is, rules and everything that they added on it. That's part of it. It's their interpretation of all those that happened between that. So it's not so much that they're changing the verbiage of the law, but he's just trying to get back to where Moses and God had at the very beginning. Moses gave them the law. God was telling them this is the law, but then they interpret it. It's like a lawyer today. You tell me something that I can't do, and I'll find everything any way I can to get around it. And it'll be legal because I'm not doing what you told me to do or whatever. And that's what that's what the Pharisees and them were doing. One of the things, I'll find it here in a minute, it talks about is, I do like the difference, the jot and the tittle. Okay, the jot is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's like to us, it's not a parenthesis, but a apostrophe. If you would write something out and have an apostrophe up there, that's all it is. That's a yod, what they call the yod. So it's what that's referred to as a jot, and the last part, the tittle, is a mark in the Hebrew letter that, if you would want to think of it like ours, and you'd have to look, you can look at it down there, it's on page 25. The difference between the letter bet and the letter kaf is a tittle. It's that little line there at the bottom. It goes across at the bottom. It's like a backwards C, and then the line at the bottom changes that letter from a bet to a kaf, which is 2 different parts of the alphabet. Same thing. The talit, a dalit, and a resh. The dalit is like a T with a long part on one side of the T and a short part on the other, and the resh doesn't have that right side of that T. So that's the tittle. And that's what he's saying. You can go through and look through the others too. It's that little part. It's not going to change one little part. Now, he's not saying, I'm changing these. A lot of people go through and they'll say, oh, you're changing. It says not one jot or tittle will be changed. Yeah, you're right. But in order to get it from the Greek or the Hebrew, I have to translate it so you, if you don't know Hebrew or Greek, into a letter or a word that we know. And sometimes it may mean 3 different things, like some of our words do. And how you know which word it is depends on your sentence, what you're trying to say. Yeah, the substance of it. And so that's where a lot of people say, oh, they're changing the Bible. They're changing the Word of God. Well, the English, yes. But if you go back to what the original Hebrew was, and somebody that's translating it from that original Hebrew, they're not changing it at all. They're looking at the same letters. So I thought that was pretty interesting in what he's saying there, that he is coming to not to change the law, but to fulfill it. Let's see, maybe it's in a little bit later on. I'll find it here in a minute, because it's talking about they were having a fire in a building, and it was on the Sabbath. And the people had to run to the priest, or the what do you call him? Rabbi, to see if it was okay to make a phone call to 911 through the fire department on the Sabbath, because that's work. They're breaking an electrical current to make it, and that's work. And in the meantime, but when the rabbi actually told them, yes, that you can't do that, by that time 3 stories had already burned down. You got to have a little common sense, and that's what he was trying to tell them with this. Same thing with the Sabbath when his disciples was eating that day. You got to have some common sense with this. If you're starving to death, yeah, you can go out and get you something to eat. If you have to walk more than whatever it is, quarter mile to get it, go do it. If they have it. So all these things he's trying to relay to them. You guys has put way too much on this. They would go through, and if they were raising a garden and they had their herbs, that's where he called the cumin and the mint, and you had a pot full, then they would tithe that. They'd count the plants out, see how many it was, cut the mint off, and give that as a tithe, as an offering to the priests. And that's okay. That's not bad. But then they weren't doing a lot of other stuff that they should have been doing. They were missing the big mark. Okay, 19 and 20. Harold, you want to read this for us?
Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven.
That's hard to do. You'd think the Pharisees and them scribes, they're the ones that write the law. They're the ones that copy the law off. They're the ones that know. They've studied it. How in the world could you be more righteous than them? Well, knowing the law and doing the law is two different things. And that's what they were. We'll see here in a couple of minutes how that sees through that they're not fulfilling. If they're breaking one of the commandments, they're breaking the least of it, then they're not fulfilling all of it. And as we go through this, there are some things there are intensities, okay, of sin that we'll see. It says, thou shalt not murder, or thou shalt not kill, which is thou shalt not murder. Now, it doesn't say if somebody in self-defense kills somebody, that's still, it tells us in the Old Testament. Remember, you still got to make a sacrifice. You still got to repent of it, do this thing, but it's not a life for life situation. It's something different. But they made it a whole different world. They were not trying to, they were trying to control it, is what they were trying to do. And these here, it's commending those that are teaching the men. At that time, they didn't have, here again, as Brother Epperson said last couple of Sundays, they didn't have all the different books that we have. Okay, they just had, most of them just had the Torah. Some of them, and none of them had, and this was in the temple. They didn't have them out there. Most people didn't have them. They might have little bits and pieces that they copied themselves down, the ones that could write. But nobody had, you would have to be very rich to have your own copy of the Torah. Yeah, here it talks, here it is about talking. In 1992, tenants led of 3 apartments in an Orthodox neighborhood in Israel burned to the ground while they asked a rabbi if a telephone call to the fire department on the Sabbath violated the Jewish law. I mean, that sounds like it's crazy, but that's, it's the way it is. That's the way they saw it.
Almost dogmatic
It is.
to the point they were trying to do it.
Yeah, and of course you guys probably saw it was yours over there, but we saw it in the hotel that we stayed at. There's one elevator that they can use on Sabbath if you're Jewish, because that elevator, it opens up and it goes to every floor. on and off, on and off, on and off, because they can't push a button that tells it to go to that floor. Now, they had 2 or 3 other elevators we could use, no problem. But if you do, you wouldn't go in any elevator except the one, and it's marked right there. It's clearly marked. This is Sabbath elevator, or elevator for the Sabbath, or whatever it is. And you, on the Sabbath, you got in that thing. You better be ready. We was on the 7th floor, so we said, okay, twiddling your thumbs, because everybody, the others were packed, and nobody's wanting to get on that one. And I said, well, let's get on it, because it's going to wait. We're going to wait down here for Robin. And we did. We got on it. It took a little while, but I said, well, we might as well, because nobody else was getting on it.
And it was to the point, let's say you was wanting to go down, but it was in the
Oh,
process
it's
of going
going up.
You
Yeah.
stepped on it at floor 3, you still had to go
All the way to the top, and all the way back down to the bottom, stopping at every floor. Oh, and we found the stairs a few times on the Sabbath. Because it was only on the second
Isn't
or
it
third.
strange?
Yeah.
Though you couldn't push a button,
Uh-uh.
but you could walk up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can walk, and I think it's a 1/4 mile or 1/10 of a mile. I'm not sure how far you can walk on Saturday. It pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
Friday evening about 4 o'clock. I mean, it's at sundown, but by 4 o'clock, the stores are closing. Everybody's getting out of town because they got to be home before the Sabbath starts, before sundown actually occurs. So yeah, you're there in Jerusalem. Whoosh, you might as well go over to the Arab neighborhood because there ain't nothing open. You ain't getting no food. You ain't getting nothing because they're all closed. So, but over there, they're having a good time. Over in the other corner, their business increases, I guess, for that day. But they did, one of the things they did, our guide, some of the girls did it, and they had it there in the hotel. They came down and they had a bunch of candles there. And they did, it's a Shabbat service that they light a match and light a candle, and then they all say the Shabbat prayer. That's what it is. And it's a few verses, and they said it in Hebrew. But I'm like, striking a match, why didn't that work? I mean, to me, if you're going to get nitty gritty, to me, that's the same thing.
Well, with those stricter standards, Jen and I couldn't go to church.
Yeah.
We'd have to travel too much of a distance.
Too far, that's right. That's right. Okay, starting on page 28, we're going to start on verse 21, 22, Janet. This is where the interpretation, what we talked about, is going to say.
You have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire.
Okay. This is one of those that it's a little bit difficult for us to understand. Maybe, I mean, the words that they're using. I'll give you an example here in just a minute. And in the word, I've taken it from the King James, so it's kill, but it's the same thing. It means murder. You've heard them in old times when they said, "Thou shalt not murder." Whosoever shall murder be in danger of the judgment. Okay, and that's what Jesus was trying to tell them. And the next one says that even if you're angry with his brother without a cause. Okay, sometimes we let little things get in, and what's a cause? You know, that kind of interrupts us. We don't know what that is. So if we get angry about that, we're not even thinking about killing our brother, but we're still angry. That could be wrong. Okay? And this is the next one, And whosoever shall be, and said, who's angry, shall be in danger of judgment. That's what that says. Whosoever is brother, he shall say, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. So that's bringing them up on charges. And that's kind of like you're talking to somebody and they say something and you say, oh, you nimwit, you nimrod, you dunce. And it's kind of the way you say it, that Raka. It's the way you're degrading and all that. You're putting it in. That's what it means. They shall be in danger of the council. The ones that could, and it's the heavenly council. You're getting close because that you're the way you're phrasing it. You're putting them down. It's kind of like the anger before. You're mad at your brother. Now you just think, oh, they just ain't worth anything. And then the fool, when you call somebody a fool, that was really bad. I mean, that's about the worst thing you can call. We'll call people idiots today or call people whatever. I'm driving down the road, you jerk. Jerk out in front of you or whatever. What do you think, dude? What are you doing? That one's even worse. That's you shall be in danger of hellfire. That one is close. Now these are different. That's why I was talking about intensities. Okay? If you start out with the first one and you have that little bit of anger, and then it gets more so your attitude toward people are kind of hateful, if you want to say it that way. It's going down a path, and then if you call somebody a fool or you don't know nothing, you're an idiot. You don't ever do anything right. Man, what he's trying to say. It's two things. It's what's coming out of your mouth, and where did it come out of your mouth from? From your heart. It's the heart. So if you get a little angry in your heart with somebody, you've already messed up. You're already on that road to where you got to be careful. That's what he's telling them. So we have to be very careful with what we say, because it leads us down that road, down that path.
Well, we have to be careful of how we interpret what's being said to us.
Exactly.
I tell Jack used to when I was work, if I got into work and the first three people I talked to, something about them agitated me.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't them, it was me. I was hearing everything in the wrong way.
Right.
And I needed to correct my attitude.
Right.
For the day where I'm not being sensitive about it.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be careful both ways.
We have sometimes we have problems, and somebody that's maybe not as quick on the uptake as we think they ought to be, and we repeat ourselves again, and we get a little louder.
Every time we repeat, you get a little louder.
Yeah, we just keep getting a little louder. Yeah. You can tell them, well, I'm not getting that. Well, you sure look like it. You sure sound like it. I don't know what you are. You sure sound like it. But
again, I guess, and when I talk about it a lot because I'm talking about myself. Okay? But it's not what you say sometimes.
It's how you say it.
There's so much. Those two things you grew up with. Sticks and stones may break my walls. That's the biggest lie ever. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's not what you say; it's how you say it.
It is, and we have to be very careful with that. It goes through this and it talks about it. I'm not going to belabor it. You guys have the notes. You can read more about it. It's really good. I mean, some of the things that I thought of, that's what I was trying to give to you. 23 through 26. Therefore, if thou bring a gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. Agree with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt not be by no means come out thence, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. if we're trying and we're showing, and I'm not saying it's for show, but if you bring a gift, as we would say, maybe to an altar, to the church, give something to the church, and we know there's something wrong with somebody else that we should have taken care of before that, then we need to go do that. Because we still have some problem with them. We were, we worked at several things in the church, worked at fireworks stands, and we worked at wrapping booths and things like that. And sometimes, I don't know if I was in charge, but I was in charge that day. It seemed like, because everybody's looking to what we need to do. And I got a little tense because we was getting behind, you know. And I said something to somebody, and I come back about 10 minutes later. I said, "Boy, I sure am sorry about that." She goes, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." And okay, fine. You know, I thought I said it too harsh or whatever. And we just have to take a breath. Sometimes we get, somebody's not doing it the way we would do it, or it's not getting done. They may be a little slower or whatever. And we were trying, because some people didn't know, you know, how they showed us how to do this, how to make it look nice and all that. I can't wrap the pairs now with Cliff hardly, but back then we could do it pretty nice. They showed us how to hide all the pieces and all that. But we have to, in whatever we're doing, you know, whether it's hot in the fireworks stand, boy, we was out there working, and it's hotter than blazes. People was, you know, buying fireworks and everything. And you get, some of them would come up there and they would not, you know, they wouldn't be happy with what they're buying anyway, and all this stuff. And then some guys would come up and just buy everything. They wouldn't care. But we just had to be careful, because you know, some people was there and some people wasn't. And if you be not careful, why ain't they out here with me? I'm burning up, you know, they're not here. We just have to be, you know, at all times, keep ourselves in check. And I'm not saying that it's something that we have to have the right attitude. If we have that attitude, we won't, yeah, it may come up in our mind. That's like anything else. Our mind, it goes about thousands of thoughts a second. And if we let it light on something, which usually happens, then that makes it worse. I mean, we start dwelling on that. And we just have to be real careful. And it's our mind, but our heart is where, again, goes back to our heart, how that's working its way in there. That we have to have it right in our heart before we can kind of act upon it. So it's saying here, "Thou shalt not by no means come out thence till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing." You're going to be in trouble if you don't, you know, make it right. You can pay all your gifts you want, or give all your offerings, but it's not going to be somebody else. If you're owing somebody else and you give their money away, if you want to put it that way. Brother Epperson, it's your turn, 27-28, page 32.
Says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart."
Right. He's taking it to the really, again, it's what they would, a lot of times what would say, they would look at this and they had, in their mind, they had to be caught, okay, and to have more than two or three witnesses before it's there. So if they were doing it and didn't get caught, they thought this, you know, may have thought it was okay. Not right, but they could say that. They had, here they're saying, "Thou shalt not." That's what's telling them that, but they're still trying to get away with it a little bit. Well, he's saying, no, it's not even that. if you go back and even lust after a woman or for man, man after woman, whatever it is, you've already started down that path again in your heart.
Well, what is exactly the lust that this is talking about? I mean, you can look at somebody and say, they're a good-looking
Right.
man or a good-looking woman, you know?
Right.
Or they've got a good figure, or, you know what I'm saying? You just notice.
Right.
So what's the lust?
When you start harboring that in your heart, okay, boy, she's nice. Boy, I could go out with her. Boy, you know, I can do this. I can do that. I mean, it don't take a lot to start to some people, because a lot of people today, it seems like their marriage vows mean nothing. And they have the quote open marriage, so whoever they see, that might be fine with them.
Well, you know, this could look upon a woman to lust after her. I know in our day and time, they say pornography is in
Oh, yeah.
churches,
Oh, yeah.
big time, and everywhere, you know. I mean, that's just looking on something that you're lusting for. Basically.
Exactly. You can have a Sears catalog. We don't have too many of those anymore, but you know, if the person's going through and looking at the women's section, guys have got imaginations. I can guarantee you. Women's a little different, I know, but men are. I can tell you, men are a little different.
You know, it's our, we're made that way.
Right.
Okay? I mean, God made us that way so we could increase the population of the world within the proper context.
Right.
But I remember Brother Moreland down there, he said a couple of times, I'll never forget, I was only the second church I ever pastored, and he made mention, he said, you know what, brother, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head. Just talking about temptation.
Right.
Right.
And he said, but what happens, you can stop it from lightening your hair and building the nest.
Right.
And as Janet said, when we begin, yeah, well, she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's good looking and all that. But there comes a time when you better stop.
Right.
Because when we begin to visualize or to, you know, and like nowadays, TV, I mean,
Walking in Walmart.
Yeah.
Good or not.
Yes.
go into, you know, I don't know.
Get some clothes on.
I remember, you know, cherry bomb, mufflers, okay? They used to have, and they always have looking women on there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, most garages is where a bunch of guys hang out and all that kind of stuff. And we're faced with that every day, all of us. I mean, and again, I used to laugh. Being around a bunch of guys and a real pretty woman walk by. But if you've ever noticed, if there's a good-looking woman, they'll, you know, the women, I mean, a good-looking guy, the women sometimes look too. And what it is, we need to, it's there in front of us.
Right. Right.
And again, iniquity is going to wax worse and worse. Look at the dress. I mean, it leaves no imagination anymore. I mean,
Well, that's why in the older times, you know, when we were younger, yeah, it was an emphasis was put on it, and you can see like now the Mormons and Amish and all that, man, they wear sleeves down here and collars here and dresses down here. They don't want anything to entice somebody. You think, well, what in the world is that? Well, it's just that's the way it is. In that culture today, it's like, man, they try to see how far they can go. It seems like that, you know, getting out in public, getting on TV with not much on.
Well, you know, I can't even hardly watch gymnastics or, you know, the sand volleyball at the Olympics and stuff because they're showing so much.
They don't hardly have anything on.
I know.
It's one of those things that it's just you have to be like you said, and that's one of the things Brother Epperson was speaking on the other day. If that bothers you, you probably shouldn't be watching that. You know, if that's bringing that to your attention all the time. Now, some people, it might not bother it at all, but you look at it.
It bothers me, like you said, just to go into Walmart and see
Oh, yeah.
walk behind somebody that's got their shorts, half of their cheeks are showing.
I know it. They're usually not very shapely. It's like, good night.
I was just brought up.
Well, just think about what we're talking about, okay? All of
It's
us,
modesty.
all of us are in our at least 60s, okay?
Right.
Go back 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the stuff that we're talking about now, okay? I remember when the short shorts, like you said, and that, you know, they had the blouses were sleeveless and the short shorts weren't, you know, well, they were pretty short, but nowadays, I mean, it's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how many have been overseas, but you go overseas, and it's 87, 88 since we've been, but over there, we was over there visiting my aunt and uncle a couple of different times, and they had television. Man, German television, Austrian television, and all that. They leave with not much to desire on television there. I mean.
Well, we visited the Netherlands on one of our trips, and I'm telling you what, they have postcards right out on the sidewalk that is, I mean, I was practically ashamed to look.
Well, more than that, they got windows that's going by through
red
there,
light
ladies,
district.
ladies on the deal there, and like, good night. They went down there one time, I think, and their 10-year-old son about got his head walked off. Oh, why'd you go down there then, I guess? You should have not took him down that way. On both of these, and some of the others, his phrase is, you have heard it said by them of old time. Here again, it's referring back to the Old Testament. It's back to, again, going to Deuteronomy and Exodus, where Moses was giving these directions. And what he was trying to tell them, Moses was trying to tell them, you need to use some understanding. And that's what it is. It's in the heart. Here again, you have to go back to it. And here again, we're running kind of late, so I'm going to jump on down to 34. 29 and 30. Who read those? Janet? Or Iris? Who was it?
I think it's
Iris, you want to read those for us?
What page?
34, page 34.
Page 34?
Yeah, 29 through 30. 29 and 30.
Oh. And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell.
Now, one of the things, and we've been, a lot of us have, here again, grown up that way. Boy, that's the way they take it. It's like, I'm not going to chop my hand off, do this stuff. It says the trouble with the literal interpretation is that it does not go far enough. Even if you did cut your hand off or gouge your eye out, you could still sin with the other hand or the other eye. Okay? It didn't really, the purposes wasn't met. What he's trying to say is, don't do that. If it's your eyes, if you have a problem with your eyes, don't be looking that way. Just like Janet said, if you're going down the street and every time you see somebody, it's somebody that's enticing to you, okay, keep your head down or do something. You know, whatever it is, you have to get by that. You have to understand. You have to get sanctified over it, is what it is. I think it was given, I think his brother Queener. Somebody said, ooh, he was talking that one time and said, boy, that's a good looking woman over there, or something to that effect. Brother Queener, I don't think. He said, well, God gave me eyes to see, didn't he? I mean, I'm just looking. It's not.
Well, Harold part of the time will say, well, it's just like I see a good looking cow out in the field, you know. She got yeah, she looks good, she's made good, hey.
Uh-huh.
You know, that's the way I equate it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So,
think it, when Jesus talks like this, to me, I think it shows this, the seriousness.
right,
You know, I mean, he goes to, I don't want to say extremes, but he uses just flat out. I mean, who would want it, like you said, plug out your eyes or do that just because God is, I guess it's my that thing, but God's serious about
Yes.
sin
he is.
and what it does to us and all these things. You know, we talk about, you may mention porn and stuff. We talk about all the victimless crimes and stuff. It affects families.
Oh, yeah.
It affects young men and women. It's just, you know, and they talk about, you know, what it's doing to our society.
Mhm.
I mean,
It's a big business for sure. Verse 31 and 32, Janet, you want to read that one?
It hath been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say to you that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery, and whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery.
Okay. Now this seems to be going a little bit on the other side. Okay, as far as it, if you go to the next page, it says in 24:1, it refers to a sexual misdemeanor authenticated by a witness. That's the school of Shammai. Okay, this was kind of in Jesus' time. All right, so that's the permissible grounds of divorce. If you were following this rabbi, had to be some kind of sexual misdemeanor. If he was going after the school of Hillel, which is another rabbi, all she could do is burn your dinner. And you could give her a bill of divorcement. That's basically what he was saying. Anything that would happen. Jesus is saying that's not, and he goes back in other scriptures and says, because of the hardness of your heart. That's why he did that, because you're wanting something that you can't have. So what he's trying to say is, if your spouse has been unfaithful, okay, whatever it might be, then you have cause. Now, it's not saying that you can't do it, or he's just saying this is something for divorce. This is what he's putting it forward. Because a lot of times, if that happens, there's no reconciliation. Okay? Because the person, one of the other persons, whoever's doing whatever, they've already made up their mind. I'm finished. I'm going to go somewhere else. It's typically. Now that's not every person, I know. Okay? But that's what it's saying. In the day of Jesus, that's what it's saying. This was almost an instrument of cruelty against the wives. That whatever they did, if they didn't completely please their husband, they could say, you better stand in line or I'll give you a written divorcement. I'll go down there and get me one. It don't take much. And it's to kind of keep them in line. It was at that particular time. Jesus was saying, no, that's not right.
I have a question. What does the Church of God of Prophecy teach nowadays on remarriage and stuff?
They allow it, if you want to go into it, they allow to be a member that you can be divorced. Now,
I know used to,
marriage, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
27 years ago, 35 years ago, they were pretty strong, pretty adamant about you couldn't
Right.
do much of nothing, you know, with the
Now,
divorce.
there's still, it kind of goes almost to each church and things of what persons can do and can't do. And it's kind of, I mean, we were in the assembly when it was in Liberal because there wasn't any other churches out there. I think it was down to Guyman was the closest church of God that we had. But theirs was of course like that. They they could be a member. We actually had a couple that was divorced. They had married again, not themselves, but somebody else. And he was the treasurer of the church. But he couldn't be a board member. Okay, they had different rules about it. But yeah, he can be this, but he can't be that.
The innocent party.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what it is. Typically, that's what we look at it as. Whoever's innocent party, the one that didn't start it. But it's hard.
I was gonna say, so many anymore that they, you know, the wife has been divorced, the husband that they have now has been divorced,
Right.
and they're married, and it's kind of like, it's just, you're surprised almost at how many of the churches are that in that situation.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
they've got a divorced spouse that's living,
Yeah.
both of them, but yet, you know, they're.
Yeah. And it's very difficult. I know. It's very difficult because it's hard. Now, what he's saying is here, again, the way I read it, like Brother Everson, the party that's really didn't want it, okay, I mean, it's kind of like when the spouse is there and the other spouse leaves, they're saying, hey, I don't want you anymore, I'm gone. So they're going to get a divorce no matter what. The other one, they say, well, no, I still want to try, but they don't. I mean, the other part. That's the simple way. I know it's not simple. It's not easy. I know the church there one time, they tried to kind of separate it between adultery, fornication, and simple fornication. And it's like, well, okay, what's the definition of fornication? And well,
And one of the ways that we interpreted it was the word pornea wouldn't fit that.
right,
Okay?
right,
And, you know, again, there we get into, but the Bible wasn't written in King James.
That's right.
It was written in Greek, the New Testament, the Old Testament Hebrew. And again, okay, Moses gave them a divorce. Some of it was a legitimate reason.
right,
But then they got to the place that they just give them a bill of divorcement for any reason
Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
I burned my eggs this morning.
Right.
And Jesus was saying, hey, come on now, marriage is a lot more serious than that.
right.
Okay? And it's still, God's original plan is still the same as it's always been. One man, one woman for life.
And I think, to me, when he chose Joseph, that was espoused to Mary, okay, he was engaged, not yet married, and then she had a child by the son, by the father, I mean God. And when Joseph found out, he had that right. I was going to marry you. Now you're pregnant? What are you telling me? I'll just give you a divorce and you go back to your house. We're not going to make a big deal about it. That's the thinking, I think, that he's looking for there. It's proof beyond about a doubt. You know, that only happened once. Did I mix you up? You're looking confused.
No, I'm just thinking, so basically, I think what I'm hearing, maybe more so, is just that they weren't, if they were unfaithful, then that's the reason that most the divorces are happening. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, right. But sometimes they will try to get together, and sometimes they won't. Maybe they're not even been unfaithful. That's happened too.
Well, yeah, a lot of people
But-
get divorced
First
just
down.
because,
Yeah.
you know, they can't get along.
But it's like one of them does want to get along, another doesn't. No, I made a mistake. Well, I know, but somebody said it makes a mistake. I've seen that happen too. I shouldn't have got married. That's what they've said. I'm not ready to get married. It's like, well, you already did it. You should have thought about that a little
Not
bit
too bad
more.
now.
Yeah. So anyway, but this part right here where Brother Everson said on 36, where it says sexual immorality, in the Hebrew it's translated, in the Greek it's translated porneia, which is the root meaning of fornication. But it's also more widely used so that it could include even premarital unchastity subsequently discovered. So even after the fact. Here is what it's saying, that if we found out somebody was untrue before marriage, they can say, well, I give you a right of divorcement for that. That's kind of what it's saying, that they found out later. They lied to them. But today that wouldn't fly. That's going on. That's
My understanding is too, for instance, one said if you ought to be joined to a harlot, if you accept that fact,
right.
you go and you find out about that fact, okay? You can't divorce her for that. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you knew that. That doesn't give her the right. Marriage is one man, one woman, in that relationship, only one man, one woman. But if you accept that when you're married, you're married.
Right.
That makes any sense.
Yeah, that's why in the Old Testament, where was it Hosea? He told him, I think it was Hosea, he told him to go out and marry a harlot. Okay, that's a little different. It's a different book. 33 through 37, you want to read that for us, Harold?
Again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whosoever is more than these committeth of evil.
It's this is one that's a little bit different. The King James is a little, the version they had in here was a little different, because that's why the wording comes. You've heard it said that those of old, you shall not swear falsely. And that's what it's getting around to. Whatever you say, you need to say, your word needs to be what you said. Sometimes we hem-haw around with something and don't really come out and say it. But what he's telling us, if you say something, yes or no, whatever it is, that ought to be what your answer is, what you're basing your decision on. And we've always put the swear into it because it's your promise. It's you're affirming that's what you said. That's what it's coming about here. That's why it comes down in the last part. Be very careful about how you talk. That's what it's saying. Don't be talking out. A lot of people do that today. I hear them, they'll get talking on a tail and it'll grow every time you hear it, it seems like. And it's like, that's why sometimes I don't talk very much. Sometimes that's because I don't want to. Okay, I heard that 3 times and it's changed every time. What's the real story? And that's, again, putting it in the heart. What that person's not true. If they tell you they're going to do something and they don't do it, that tells you something about them right away. Well, I can't trust them. They told me they'd be here or not. And I know things happen. But if overall you know somebody and each and every day they're telling you something and they hold true to it, that's what it's saying. Just be yourself. Make sure you're saying what you're going to be doing.
We are snared by our words.
We are. 38 through 42. You have heard that it had been said, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, from him that would borrow of thee, turn not away. Now, all that, we've heard that before, about letting them slap you and everything else. Well, what it's talking about here, a lot of times we think people slap them by hitting them, you know, with your palm open. Here, what they're talking about is a rebuke, kind of a backhand, kind of somebody's rebuking them and talking. It says, when a person insults us, slaps us on the right cheek, we would want to give them back, plus a little more. Jesus said we should be patient and bear with them such insults and offenses and not resist an evil person who insults us this way. Instead, we trust God to defend us. France points out that ancient Jewish writings say that striking someone with the back of the hand is a severe insult, was punishable by a very heavy fine, according to the Mishnah. That's another part of what they take, the Mishnah. And it's even got a reference there, that BK 86, that's chapter and verse. So we have to be very careful. Here again, it's being, Jesus did this, and when they was punishing him, he didn't have any right. I mean, he didn't deserve anything that they gave him as far as the crown of thorns, slapping him, the whipping him, all that. That was done because they were mocking him, basically. And we have to be very careful with this. It says Jesus is here saying that the true Christian has learned to resent no insult and to seek retaliation for no slight. When somebody, it's again that spirit that comes upon us. And, you punch me, I'm going to punch you back. And that's not quite the way it is. Now, it may not feel good, and you may have to turn away and walk away from it, but that's what he's telling us, that we need to endure that, because some people are going to try to rile you. They're going to try to get something out of you just to see if you're made up what you're doing. The very top of that on page 39 said the old law did teach an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's in retaliation for what somebody had done. But over time, religious teachers moved this command out of its proper sphere, which was a principle limiting the retribution for the civil government, and put it in the wrong sphere as an obligation in personal relationships. So it's like if they're going to penalize you, they penalize you the proper amount, not not everything. And then we take it to be the other way around. One of the interesting things that says, if he talks about your cloak and your tunic, and then walking a mile, says under the military law, any Roman soldier could command a Jew to carry his soldier's pack for 1 mile. So if you come upon a bunch of soldiers and they were marching somewhere, they could get a Jew to carry their pack for 1 mile. Well, he's saying, well, if that happens, then carry it too. Go the extra mile for them, show them. And to me, that's pointing out that, okay, if you wanted that, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. I'll help you out all I can. And it kind of makes them think more of you then. Same thing about giving them the cloak, your jacket, and your coat, if you want to say it that way. Give them that too. And then 43 through 47, and then I'm going to read, I think there's 48 too. Yeah. Ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which despitefully use you, persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven, for he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? And then 48 is, be ye perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. It's it's hard when it's easy to like people that's around you, that you're around a lot, that you like. A lot of times somebody that you don't like, you don't go around them that much, do you? If you happen to be in a party and they're there, okay, then you try to migrate away from them a little bit, try to get out of it. But here, that's what Jesus is saying. Try to love your enemies. That's hard to do. That's difficult. Because that's what our human nature is. Just get away from them. I don't want to mess with them. But God loves them. He loves everybody. That's the whole portion people are missing today, where they bring out, oh, this hate law. You're hating me because of what I am, or what I do, or all this stuff. No, God loves you. He doesn't like what you're doing, whatever it is. But He wants everybody. He wants everybody, every human, to be saved. And that's the point. So many Christians are getting, I think, on the bandwagon and almost building up a hate against the other people that aren't like them, whatever it is, Muslims or Hindus, whatever. So that's a hard call to me. That's one of the hardest ones in here, to love their enemies. Because who was their enemy at that time? This is the Romans. They hated the Romans because they were occupying them. But he's telling them, you need to love your enemies. Those are the ones that beat him, that put the thorns on his head, did all that stuff to him. And they did it. He did not deserve it. One of the soldiers even said that in his crucifixion, that he's a son, he never had seen anything like that before. Sorry, I ran over a little bit. Any questions or any comments? Well, if you have some, you can bring them up next week. Because there's a lot of information in here. It's good. I've read it twice now, and I still have a lot of fun.
There's a lot of ground to cover.
All right. Well, have a good night.
No, it goes against the flesh.
It does. That's the problem.
It goes against the flesh.
Will he need to strive to